All right, you're all welcome once again to GFAM Africa. This is still the 3 days free training from GFAM Africa Academy. This is the day 2. Today we are going to learn how to stock, the sizes of fish to stock, and the kind of pond to stock them, and how we can stock them. Like we discussed yesterday briefly, I hope we all followed up from yesterday's class. Yes, we all know that after everything, for you to start, you have your site, you have your location, your space. Then you need to have your materials available. The materials needed depending on the kind of pond you would want to start with, or you want to start with. You have earthen pond, you have tarpaulin pond, we'll have concrete pond, we'll have chain, we'll have plastic pond, plastic tank pond. Yes. So, but we at GFAM Africa, we prefer mostly earthen pond because it is easy and less stressful. But we try culturing, culturing training from the small stage. We'll start before we transfer them to the earthen pond. Now, there are different sizes of fish. We have the fingerling, we have the standard fingerling, we have the post fingerling, we have the juvenile, we have the post juvenile, then we have the jumbo size. So then, like when you're stocking in the tarpaulin pond, you can stock standard juvenile, standard fingerling, you can stock fingerling, you can stock any one of them. It is good for earthen, it is good for tarpaulin pond, and even GP tank or plastic tank. Even also you can also do that with concrete pond. Yes, but if it is earthen pond, you have to remember that you have to know that earthen pond, it is better you start, like I said yesterday, it is better you start with jumbo size, because by so doing, it must have grown to a certain stage where it may not really die easily, because at times, some earthen pond is being exposed direct to the sun. But when you're dealing with tarpaulin pond, there is a little covering. There's always a little covering. You understand? So there's a little, you provide a shade, but that of earthen pond, at times it is allowed, because once the weather is hot, they go down the water, and down bottom of the water is always cool when it is earthen pond. Yeah. So now, depending on the kind of pond you choose, if you choose earthen pond, there are processes before you put in your fish. Let me say, for instance, for earthen pond, or if you want to train 1,000 in an earthen pond, let's say if we must have earthen pond, you also need to have a tarpaulin pond, where you have to culture the juvenile, the fingerlings first, or any size, especially the fingerlings or standard fingerlings, where you have to culture them first, then do a little of sorting, then before you now take them to the earthen pond. Now, in the earthen pond, when you dig your pond, remember that is what is called cleansing. You have to apply alkaline. Some persons, you use something like plantain leaf in order to kill the toxicity. You kill the toxins. You kill some germs, ants, and the rest of it that's close to the pond. Then, especially. Okay, let me just conclude with that of earthen pond. So you do that, then, or if you dig the earthen pond, you leave it for like 2 weeks. You apply water. If you're using hose, whatever you're using, whatever that is your source of water, you apply the water. Make sure that the water stays there for at least 2 weeks. Then after you now go there, try to cleanse the water, then apply your alkaline, which could either be salt. Once you apply the salt, allow it for like 1 week again. when you allow it for like 1 week again, then after that you can now apply your, make sure that you've allowed, when you apply anything, the chemical, any medicine, which there are different medicines, but the rampant one is salt. When you apply it, make sure at least it stays for like a week, and at times it could be a week and 3 days, or a week, or 2 weeks, or 2 weeks. So like we leave it for like a month. For 1 month for us, we leave it. We in GFAM, at GFAM Africa, we leave it for 1 month. By so doing every other thing, then before we now begin to apply our fish in there and begin to feed. And when we transfer our fish from the tarpaulin pond to the earthen pond, you don't feed them that very moment. You don't feed them at night. We don't even feed them that day. We will now feed them the next morning. You see that when you feed them the next morning, they rush the food because they are hungry. But now they are settled in that. Remember, that place is now a new habitat for them. It's a new living place to them. So they are now beginning to acclimatize. They are beginning to understand the environment. So when they are feeding now, when you throw feed, they will rush it and they eat very well. So they begin to understand the environment. They begin to feed you, depending on how you. And what I mean, one thing is, if your time for feeding them, if you wanted to grow very well, if your time for feeding them is 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. in the evening, 9 a.m. in the morning and 5 p.m. in the evening, please make sure you keep to that procedure. Make sure you keep to that procedure. Latest 30 minutes late. Let's say 30 minutes late. It can be so. So that is what it is. That's how it is, and that's just what it is for the earthen pond. Then you have to understand that there is also a little shading. Too much shade can kill your fish. It can cause them sickness. Then too much exposure to sun can also cause them at times, depending on the kind of environment where you are. Yes, that's why the environment matters. So too much shade, like if you see in GFAM Africa, if you see most of our farms, you see that there are plantain suckers planted around our ponds. Yes, they also serve as shade. So that's it. So it is very, very important. Depending on the kind of pond, there are maintenance mechanisms. There are maintenance mechanisms that is being used for different ponds. Then, if it is that of concrete pond, once you make your concrete pond, you have to allow it so that the chemicals, they don't start emitting chemicals. You have to apply just the same way like you apply. You can put water into it, apply plantain leaves, dry ones, fresh ones, just apply them, put them inside for like 1 week or 2 weeks, so that it will begin to produce muco and the rest of small living organisms. Then you take it out again, apply another one before you apply another one for leave it for 1 week. Then before you take out that water again, apply another water, leave that water for like 1 week again. Then before you can now take out that water and apply another water, leave it for 3 days before you apply you can now put your fish inside of it to avoid the chemical from the cement killing your fish. Yes, and at times you have to watch the temperature level, because at times in concrete ponds, the water, when it is being exposed to sunlight, at times the water gets hot. Yes, at times water gets hot. That's why at times it is better you have a little shade whenever you're using concrete pond and that of earth and that of a tarpaulin pond. Yes, it is better you have a little shade. Shade it. Especially when you're using tarpaulin pond. Then yes, that's it for the. Then another thing, you must learn to always clean your pond when you're using concrete or tarpaulin pond. Always learn to clean your pond. Don't let it get too dirty. It can cause your fish sickness. Then another thing, in a tarpaulin pond or concrete pond, please don't let people come in too much to your farm. You know, when people come around, they begin to look, before you know it, they are putting their hands in. That alone could contaminate your water. That alone could also contaminate your water. So you don't do that. You don't let that happen. That alone could contaminate your water. So you don't let that happen. Yes. Don't let people in, because you don't know where they are coming from. Some of them may be having bacteria in their hand, and when they are putting their hand into the water, they could contaminate the water, and that could cause disease to your fish. So when people come to sea for sightseeing, you don't let them get too close. You don't let them put their hands into the water. You can just let them watch from a little bit far, and then while you do the feeding. I hope we are following. So that is it for concrete and tarpaulin pond. Then for the tarpaulin pond, you know that tarpaulin pond always have at times when you leave tarpaulin pond for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, at times a month, 2 months, you see that they begin to develop green things. So it is advisable you keep you wash your tarpaulin pond regularly to avoid your fish is getting infected. Yes, that's it for the concrete and tarpaulin pond and that of earthen pond. So, like I've told you before, as a beginner, you have to know the size of fish you want to train, then know the kind of pond you want to culture your fish. You want to stock your fish. Where you want to stock your fish. Yes. When you're stocking, you have to know the kind of pond you're stocking. Yes, that's it. So, and remember that I told you earlier that each of the pond have their different maintenance mechanism. So that's one thing you must put into cognizance. You must also put into consideration. All right.